This is not just a story, it is the voice of many families who've suffered in silence. This is a story of a man who was wrongly buried in shame, of a daughter who almost lost everything to lies, and of a truth that refused to stay buried. Stay with us till the end. This could be the story that opens your eyes to the power of truth and forgiveness. Grab your popcorn, watch with your family and friends, and please, if you have not subscribed, subscribe to help us grow our channel. And please share it with your family and friends. Oh yeah, let's go there. In the peaceful village of Osu, surrounded by thick forest and tall palm trees, lived a man known for his honesty and dignity, Mazi Ejiofor. He was a respected farmer and a wise man who never missed a village meeting and was always ready to help his fellow villagers. He had a beautiful wife, Egondo, and four children, two strong boys, Obinna and Somto, and two lovely girls, Adaeze and Ngozi. Together, they lived a simple but joyful life. Mazi Ejiofor believed in hard work, prayer, and truth. But everything changed the day he had a misunderstanding with one of his kinsmen, Mazi Okeke. It started over a land dispute, a narrow stretch of farmland near the stream that both families had used for years suddenly became a topic of argument. Mazi Okeke, proud and hot-tempered, accused Mazi Ejiofor of shifting his boundary line. Mazi Ejiofor denied it, saying, "Let us call the elders to settle this. Fighting over land is not worth our peace." But Mazi Okeke shouted and said, "You think because the villagers respect you, you can take what is not yours?" The argument got worse. People gathered, and before long, harsh words were exchanged. It was the first time Osu village saw Mazi Ejiofor raise his voice in public. From that day, they became enemies. 3 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Mazi Okeke fell sick. It started with a strange headache that no herbs could cure. His wife went from one dibia, that is herbalist, to another, but nothing worked. Within 5 days, Mazi Okeke died mysteriously in the night. Panic spread. Whispers began. He and Ejiofor quarreled not long ago. Ejiofor must have done something, they said. Even without evidence, the villagers pointed fingers at Mazi Ejiofor. They said, "There is no such thing as coincidence in this land." Mazi Ejiofor was shocked. "I did not kill him. I did not kill Mazi Okeke. I am a Christian. I do not practice charms or blood sacrifices. God is my witness." But the people didn't listen. At a village meeting under the Iroko tree, the elders said, "If you are truly innocent, come and swear before the oracle. Let the gods decide." Ejiofor stood his ground and said, "I will not swear before any oracle. My faith does not allow me. I fear God more than any man." His refusal was taken as a confession. That night, a mob of young men, led by the village vigilante, stormed his compound. They dragged him into the evil forest, a place feared by even the strongest men in Osun. At the center of the forest stood an old tree, twisted like a serpent, with roots above the ground and bars flying around it at dusk. There, they tied Mazi Ejiofor. "If you are innocent," they said, "you will survive the night. If you are guilty, the spirits of the forest will deal with you." Egundu begged. She cried, clung to her husband's wrapper, and said, "Please, don't do this to him. He has done nothing wrong." Her children watched with trembling lips and wet eyes, but the villagers pushed her back. The forest swallowed Mazi Ejiofor. By morning, when the crowd returned, his lifeless body hung from the ropes. Head dropped, lips cracked, eyes opened to the heavens. The people gasped. The gods have spoken, said the chief priest. Without further question, they buried him at the foot of the tree. That was their tradition. No prayers, no honor, no truth. Back in the village, Egundo wore black, sitting on a low stool. Her once radiant skin turned pale. The children stopped going to school. Friends stopped visiting. Neighbors whispered. Even those who once shared meals with them now avoided their compound. They were now the family of a murderer. But in her heart, Egundi knew her husband was innocent. After 3 months, they buried Mazi Ejiofor. One of the king's men suddenly fell ill. His name was Mazi Nnanna, a man known for his strong voice during village meetings and one of those who had strongly insisted that Ejiofor be punished without mercy. At first, his family thought it was an ordinary sickness. They rushed him to the hospital in the nearby town. The doctors ran several tests, blood work, X-ray, scans, but all the results came back normal. Yet the man grew weaker by the day. He could not stand, he could not eat, and at night he screamed in his sleep, shouting strange things that frightened his wife and children. After spending weeks in the hospital without any improvement, the doctors discharged him, advising the family to seek spiritual help. His relatives turned to traditional medicine, boiling herbs and bathing him in concussions, but still his condition only worsened. Finally, in desperation, they took him to a popular prayer ministry in a nearby city. The pastor there began to pray, and as the prayer intensified, a word of knowledge came. The pastor suddenly stopped and said, "This man has a confession to make. Until he speaks the truth, heaven's hands are tied. Take him back to his people. What he has hidden is crying louder than his pain." Shocked and confused, the family carried Mazen Nana back to Osu. His body was frail and he could barely speak. But the moment they entered the compound, he asked them to call the elders and his fellow kinsmen. When everyone had gathered, the elders, youths, women standing by the windows, Mazi Nnanna asked for water. He drank slowly, then cleared his throat. Then he said in a broken voice, "I am the one who killed Mazi Okeke, not Mazi Ejiofor. Mazi Ejiofor was innocent." A thick silence fell over the gathering. He continued, "Mazi Okeke caught me sleeping with his wife. He threatened to expose me to the council and report me to my own wife. I begged him, but he refused. I became desperate. When I noticed he had a quarrel with Mazi Ejiofor, I used the opportunity. I followed Mazi Okeke to his farm one morning and I struck him by keeping a charm on his path for him to cross over, which he was not aware of. And he did cross it, and he fell ill and died. Then I told others that I saw Ejiofor fighting with him earlier, and they believed me." People began to murmur. Some women screamed. One of the elders shouted, "Tofiakwa!" But before anyone could say more, Mazi Nnanna fell to the ground and died. His eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-sentence. There was panic. Some ran out of the compound. Others stood still, shaking from head to toe. When the shock wore off, the people of Osun realized what they had done. An innocent man, Mazi Ejiofor, had been punished, shamed, and buried like a criminal. And the true culprit had just confessed and died in their presence. The very next day, the elders, women, and youths gathered in Egondo's compound, begging her and her children for forgiveness. They wept openly, knelt down, and pleaded. They offered to train her children, give them land, and pay compensation. But Egondo refused and said, "You all failed us when it mattered most," she said. "Now let the land and God judge all of us." Some hunters who had buried Mazi Ejiofor in the forest also spoke up. One of them said, "We saw strange claw marks on his body, like that of a wild animal, but fear did not allow us to speak. Now we know the land was angry." To honor the dead and correct their wrongs, the villagers went into the forest with drummers and elders. They exhumed Ejiofor's body, wrapped it in fine white cloth, and returned him to the village. There, they gave him a proper, dignified burial with gun salutes, praise songs, and public apologies. Years passed, and Adaeze, the first daughter of late Mazi Ejiofor, blossomed into a beautiful, hard-working woman, graceful like her mother Egondo, and full of wisdom like her late father. When she finally got married, the village rejoiced, especially because of all the hardship her family had endured in the past. Her husband, Obinna, was a handsome, kind hearted businessman from Umudim, a neighboring village. Before the wedding, Egondo, her mother, had invited Obinna's parents and told them everything about how Mazi Ejiofor was falsely accused and killed, and how the truth later came out. She wanted them to hear it from her mouth before they took her daughter. Obinna's parents listened, shocked and surprised, but they praised her honesty and gave their blessings. The marriage was celebrated with joy, drums and dancing that echoed through the hills. Adaeze and Obinna later relocated to the city, and they were blessed with three lovely children, two boys and a girl. Life smiled on them. Adaeze's bond with her mother-in-law, Mama Obinna, grew very strong. Mama Obinna treated her like her own daughter and often told people, "This one is not my daughter-in-law, she is my daughter." After years of joy and peace in their marriage, Adaeze and Obinna returned to the village for Christmas, only to discover that Mama Obinna had fallen seriously ill. They agreed to take her back to the city after the celebrations so she could receive proper care. One morning, as Adaeze made her way to Nkwo Market, she met a woman, a relative from her husband's side, Madam Nkechi. The woman greeted her with a smile that barely hid the bitterness in her voice. "Adaeze," the woman said, "you are carrying yourself like someone who is loved in that family. But let me tell you something that you clearly don't know. That woman you call Mama, she didn't want your marriage." Adaeze paused, staring at her in disbelief. And the woman, Madam Kechi, continued and said, "She told people that your father was buried in the evil forest for committing abomination, that he killed his own kinsman, and your people cover it up. She said she will never allow her noble family name to be dragged in the mud by a cursed bloodline like yours, that this marriage must end." Adaeze stood there, trembling. Her hands shook. Her heart burned. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her face grew cold. The woman, Nkechi, patted her on the shoulder and walked away with a smirk, as if she had just dropped a stone into calm waters. That evening, when Adaeze returned from the market, her mood had changed. Her once soft countenance turned bitter. She avoided Mama completely. When Obinna asked why, she simply said, "Mama will no longer follow us to the city. If you insist on taking her, then I won't go with you." Obinna was shocked. "What happened?" he asked. But Adaeze refused to say a word. She bottled everything up, confused and troubled. Obinna didn't want to escalate the situation, so he quietly went to his mother's room that night and gently told her and said, "Mama, don't worry. will prepare properly and come back for you later. Mama, though heartbroken, nodded quietly. She sensed something was wrong, but she said nothing. Back in the city, things worsened. Adaeze remained cold, and Obinna, caught between his wife and his sick mother, became frustrated. Their once peaceful home grew tense. Mama's health declined further. Days turned to weeks, and Obinna grew desperate. One night, Obinna broke down and told Adaeze and said, "If anything happens to my mother, I will never forgive you. Never. You will be the one to carry it." Adaeze, now torn between guilt and pride, realized their marriage was crumbling fast. Her once beautiful home now felt like a prison of silence and blame. So, in search of peace, she visited a woman she deeply respected, an older friend of her who had always given her sound advice. She poured out her heart. The woman listened patiently, then asked one question and said, "My daughter, have you asked your mother in law whether all this is true?" Adaeze paused and said, "No," she admitted, her eyes full of shame. "I didn't." The woman leaned forward and said, "Then that is your first mistake. It is better to hear from the source before you destroy your home over gossip. Go and ask her now." That advice struck Adaeze like lightning. She wiped her eyes and left that day with a determined heart. She called Obinna and told him she wanted to visit the village. He agreed, still unsure of her motive. When she arrived and sat before Mama, Adaeze fought tears. She looked into the frail old woman's eyes and asked gently and said, "Mama, please, that day we came home, a woman, Madam Nkechi, told me you never supported my marriage, that you said my father was buried in the evil forest for killing someone, that you wanted our marriage to end, and that my family hide the truth from you. Mama, is it true?" Mama Obinna stared at her in surprise, and then she burst into laughter and said, "So is that parrot woman that filled your ears with poison?" she said. "That one who can't even keep her own secrets." She shook her head, still chuckling weakly, and said, "My daughter, when we came to marry you, your mother personally called me aside. She told me everything about your father, the pain, the shame, the truth that came out later. She wept in my presence. She begged me not to let the sins of the past stain your future. And I held her hands and told her one thing, that I would take you not as a daughter in law, but as my own daughter." Tears streamed down Adeze's face. The truth shattered every lie she had believed. She fell on her knees and said, "Mama, I'm sorry. I should have come to you first. I was blinded by anger. Please forgive me." Mama Obinna lifted her gently and held her and said, "I forgave you before you even asked," she said with a tired smile. Adaeze returned to the city and went straight to her husband. She told him everything, from what the woman had said to how she confronted Mama and what Mama revealed. Obinna, overwhelmed with emotion, embraced her tightly and said, "Thank you for opening up," he said. "Let's go and bring Mama back." And they did. Mama Obinna was brought back to the city and placed under proper medical care. She gradually regained her strength. Peace returned to their home. Love blossomed once again. Adaeze and her husband reconciled fully. And Mama Obinna spent the rest of her days surrounded by laughter, grandchildren, and the warmth of a united family. In life, what we hear can destroy what we've built if we don't seek the truth. But when love humbles itself and truth is embraced, healing begins. Adaeze learned the hard way that gossip is a weapon and silence can be dangerous. But in the end, truth won and peace returned. This is where our story ends. But before we end it, let's look into our moral lessons. Rushing to judgment can destroy innocent lives. Mazi Ejiofor, an upright man, was buried in the evil forest, wrongly accused of killing his kinsman. The villagers, in their haste and blinded by fear, condemned him without proper investigation. Lesson: never be quick to pass judgment without hearing all sides. Innocent people suffer daily because society chooses gossip over truth. The wounds of false accusation don't end with the dead. Mazi Ejiofor's tragic end haunted his children long after his death. His daughter Adaeze faced humiliation, doubt, and rejection because of the stain left by the falsehood. Lesson: lies don't just hurt the accused, they stain generations. Be careful what stories you believe and repeat. Gossip is a poison that breaks homes. A single comment from a gossipy relative almost destroyed Adaeze's marriage. Her mind was poisoned before she sought the truth. Lesson: gossip may sound sweet in the ears, but it has the power to turn love into hatred. Verify before you vilify. Real strength is in seeking truth, not holding grudges. Adeze's willingness to humble herself and ask her mother-in-law the truth helped her save her home and restore peace. Pride breaks bonds, but humility builds bridges. Sometimes all it takes is one honest conversation to clear years of misunderstanding. Forgiveness heals what anger cannot. Mama Obinna had every reason to be angry, but she chose love and understanding. And even after Adaeze wronged her, she forgave her with grace. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength in disguise. It doesn't erase the past, but it heals the future. Every family carries a story, some with pain, some with redemption. Adeze's family bore a painful history, but through honesty, love, and reconciliation, the cycle of pain was broken. No matter your background or your family's past, your future can be different if you choose truth and love. Mazi Ejiofor's story reminds us that false accusations destroy more than just lives. They leave wounds that scar generations. Yet, in the face of pain, love and forgiveness rose again. As Adaeze learned, not every tale whispered in the dark deserves your belief. Sometimes healing begins with a single question: is it true? May this story remind us to seek truth, speak with care, and forgive even when it's hard, because only then can families be whole again. My final advice to viewers: before you judge, listen. Before you act, ask. Before you spread a story, verify. And when the truth finally comes to light, even if it's hard, have the courage to make it right. This concludes our story. Thank you once again for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share, and also touch the bell button so that you will be notified each time we put out new video. Subscribe for more stories with powerful life lessons. Please and please subscribe to help us grow our channel. And please don't forget to leave your comments, your question, or your suggestion in the comment section, and we will come back to deal with it. God bless you all as you do so. Love you. Bye bye. Mwah.